a prepared statement conceding that
because John Dodd Casey has just started the sentencing.
Vincent Chan, you may remain seated for the time being. Dealing first with the background, you are now 45 years of age. You have no previous convictions. I have to sentence you today for a large number of offences, 56 in total. All of the offences for which I must sentence you are serious, some extremely so, involving, as they do, crimes of a sexual nature, directed mostly at young children, some of them very young indeed. You committed these offences over a period of 13 years, beginning in 2011 and continuing until your arrest in 2024. You pleaded guilty to all of these offences at the first opportunity, and you are entitled to a 1/3 reduction of the sentences that would otherwise be appropriate. The offences come to this court by two different procedural routes. The first group of offences, 26 in all, appear on the indictment and are referred to as counts on the indictment. The second group, consisting of 30 offences, were committed to this court for sentence and are referred to as charges. There is no significance for today's purposes in the different terminology. You were born in North London into a law-abiding family. You are highly educated with a first degree followed by a master's and then a postgraduate certificate in education. In October of 2007, you started as a high-level teaching assistant and IT support at St Mary's, a primary school in Finchley, here in North London, remaining there for 10 years until June of 2017. No doubt all relevant checks would have been carried out before your appointment. No concerns were expressed whilst you were working at the school, so far as I'm aware. Immediately after leaving the primary school, you began working in 2017 at what became the Bright Horizons nursery on the Finchley Road. Your role was described as an early years practitioner, and with grim irony, I note that you were given responsibility for the safety and welfare of children at the nursery who were between 2 and 3 years of age. Staff at the nursery were issued with iPads for good professional reasons. It was in May of 2024 that some of your colleagues became concerned. Music for your own grotesque amusement and entertainment. Your colleagues' concerns were taken seriously and you were suspended following an internal investigation. That led to the police investigation and your arrest on the 11th of June of 2024, initially on suspicion of child neglect. Your home address was searched following your arrest and a number of digital devices were seized, that's to say your computer and several hard drives. Examination of those devices provided the shocking evidence that has given rise to your prosecution. The examination revealed that from as long ago as 2011, you had been behaving in a sexually deviant manner, mostly, but not exclusively, focusing on the young children in your care. Turning to the offences for which I am to sentence you today all came to light because you chose to record your perverted activities. There is no evidence before me, however, to suggest that you have sought to share or to upload any of that material. The police investigation revealed that you'd had amassed over a long period a very large collection of pornographic imagery downloaded from the darker recesses of the internet, covering every aspect of sexual activity and involving all ages. Your appetite for this material was substantial and not limited to imagery portraying child abuse. But much of your collection did record images of penile penetration involving extremely young children, their rape, in other words. Your appetite for this material helps to create and to sustain a dreadful market. A number of the offences before me today reflect this aspect of your criminality. The imagery offences, as I will describe them, fall into two principal categories. The first is those that are based on your own recording of children, and indeed adults. And the second category consists of imagery that you have downloaded from the internet. In the first category are counts 2, 4, 6, 8, 11, 12, 14, 15, 17, 18 and 20, and charges 1 through to 9 and 16, 17 and 18. All are offences relating to you taking the images yourself. Of these offences, those in counts 4, 6, 8 and 11 and charges 1 and 6 fall into the most serious category of this type of offence, involving, as they do, you manipulating pornographic images from the internet to allow you to superimpose the faces of children who were in your charge when you worked at the primary school, adding vile and offensive text to personalise the material. You were there actually producing imagery as opposed to simply recording or downloading. In the second category are the offences relating to you downloading indecent images of children. These are reflected in counts 20 through to 26. These offences are further distinguished by analysis of the gravity of the images themselves and whether they are moving or still. You had downloaded 280 videos and 1,204 still indecent images of children, some extremely young, falling into category A because they depict images of penetrative sex. Counts 21 and 24. You had also downloaded 83 videos and 1,214 still images depicting non-penetrative sexual activity, falling into category B, counts 22 and 25. And 24 videos and 23,376 stills comprising indecent material, falling into category C, counts 23 and 26. All of this material serves to confirm your sexual obsession. The material recovered from your computer and hard drives revealed for the first time something of your aberrant behaviour when you were teaching at St Mary's Primary School. It's to you creating indecent images. You had taken and manipulated 14 images of a young primary school pupil between February of 2015 and November of 2019, superimposing that child's face onto the face of an unknown female child being raped. The precise date when you filmed or photographed the pupil is not clear, but your obsession with her is all too clear. You manipulated the digital imagery further to add foul text, suggesting that you were in some way participating and involved in the activity. Charge 2 is a similar offence with the same pupil, introduced into a series of pornographic stills. These were created in 2018, after the young girl had left the school. You were still obsessing over her, it would seem. Charges 3, 6, 7 and 8 are similar offences relating to 2 further pupils. The second strand of your offending whilst at St Mary's relates to your installing cameras under the desks of some of the young girls who were pupils there. You tried, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, to capture images of their underwear. Charges 4, 5, 10, 11 and 12 relate to similar offences of what is now termed upskirting. The third strand of your offending whilst at St Mary's relates to your predilection for going into empty classrooms.
And As you can see, the video feed has been suspended for legal reasons. This might happen several times throughout this sentencing of Vincent Chan for a number of reasons, largely because of the gravity of the offences that they are talking about. Let's return to Tom Parmenter, who can tell us a little bit more about what is happening here. And Tom, what we've heard so far is very, very serious. We think the court feed is back. Let's return to it.
To imagery found on your devices.
Let's return to Tom. Sorry about this. This may happen a little bit throughout the next half an hour. Tom, what we've heard about so far is very serious in itself, isn't it? It's the imagery that the police found. They'd gone to arrest this man for one reason, but then they found a whole load of other stuff of even more concern on this computer.
Yes, we're hearing a calm, methodical summary of quite grotesque offending that Vincent Chan has already pleaded guilty to, and that is why he's been sentenced here at Wood Green in North London this afternoon. And as you heard from, if you've listened to any of the last few minutes of the judge explaining the case with Vincent Chan...
We're going to go back to the court.
With this young girl, as police found some 2,000 images of her, not all indecent, but ones taken by you, suggesting that obsession. There were, in addition, some 50 videos covertly recorded by you of her when she was in her bedroom or in her garden. Charge 19 is rather different and relates to your sexual assault of an adult. Police found video and still images showing you sexually assaulting a woman who was known to you. Sleep as you film yourself touching her breasts. The metadata shows that this occurred on the 9th of July of 2011 between 2:55 and 4:30 in the morning. Offences of voyeurism, that is to say, watching a private act in order to gain sexual satisfaction. 7 of those offences were committed by you in your own home. These are charges 20 through to 26. You had set up a camera in the bathroom and bedroom in your home. You recorded 3 women using the lavatory.
Well, John Dodd, KC, continuing his summary of the charges against nursery paedophile Vincent Chan. A real array of charges that he is facing, not just the charges of filming and manipulating images of very tiny children that were in his care at both a primary school and a nursery in North London, but also we are hearing voyeurism charges, the fact that he installed cameras under the desks in the school to capture images of girls in their underwear, the fact that he appeared to be obsessed with one particular girl and had manipulated images of her a number of times, and also covert recordings that the court was told about, covert recordings of a girl in her bedroom that she didn't know about, and also in her garden, a sexual assault on a woman that was known to him that she was unaware of, and voyeurism offences related to cameras that he'd installed in his own home, in his bathroom and in the bedroom of his home. And before the court broke for lunch, one of the victims gave an impact statement of this, of one of the women who was secretly filmed. She said she's now paranoid about using the bathroom. She felt violated and humiliated when she discovered what had happened. Let's return to the court.
Between 2011 and 2017, but these were non-contact offences. You had limited yourself to looking and watching and recording, but you had not touched your victims, with that one significant exception. That all changed in 2017 when you left the primary school and took up your position at the nursery. Your offending escalated and became far more serious. Counts 1 through to 20 reflect that offending. There are 5 counts of assault of a child under
Well, John Dodd, KC, now moving on to the section of evidence that moves to the Bright Horizons nursery in Finchley Road, West Hampstead, where, as he just told the court, that is the point that the offendings, that the charges escalated and now moved on to assaults. Let's return to the court.
The assaults lasted for between 30 seconds and 1 minute and 6 seconds. There is nothing in the material placed before me to suggest that either young child was physically injured. These offences carry with them a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. These are counts 3, 5, 7, 9 and 10. I will treat these as the lead offences and I will pass sentences upon them that reflect all of the offending for which I have to sentence you today. The linked filming counts are counts 4, 6, 8, 11 and 12. There are, in addition, 4 counts of sexual assault of a child under the age of 13. These are counts 1, 13, 16 and 19, with the associated filming counts 2, 14, 15, 17, 18 and 20. The period covered is between the 4th of August 2022 and the 26th of March of 2024. What the recovered footage reveals there, Mr. Chan, is you sexually assaulting 3 girls between the ages of 2 and 4, touching them inappropriately, sometimes over their clothing, sometimes beneath it, but not penetrating them. The recordings run for between 15 seconds and 1 minute and 7 seconds. These children are not all asleep. Turning away from you, Mr. Chan, and the detail of your offences to consider your victims. There are so many of them, from the children involved to their parents, those who worked alongside you, and those who were close to you. There are many victims left profoundly hurt as a result of your offending. I have read with care the victim personal statements and heard one of them read. They make for harrowing reading.
Well, as we were telling you, the victims had the opportunity to give their thoughts to the court, and one of them did talk about the fact that she felt absolutely violated when she realised that she had been secretly filmed using the bathroom. She said she was devastated also for the children he abused. She said, "I often lie awake thinking about the child victims of Vincent Chan," she said. Let's return to the court.
Now that much older and able to write her own impact statement. Her sense of pain was clear. We heard from the mother of one of the little girls at the nursery and her distress at learning of your violation of her daughter. The sense that somehow she and her partner had failed to protect their child. They bear no fault, Mr. Chan, no parent does. The fault is yours and yours alone. And then the remarkable document, the community impact statement, presented on behalf of, I'm told, somewhere in the region of 200 parents who had entrusted their children to the nursery where you worked. It eloquently expresses the grief felt by so many. So many people have suffered, whether directly or indirectly, as a result of your conduct, Mr. Chan. I'm afraid that no sentence this court can pass will cure the hurt that they all feel or address the fears held by the parents as to what you have or might have done to their children. And, lest we forget, Each of the children pictured in your collection of child pornography is a victim as well. I will explain the approach to sentence in this case. The lead offences here are the Section 6 offences, the 5 assaults by penetration of children under the age of 13. Counsel are essentially in agreement as to the categorisation of all of the offences for which I have to sentence you today. Mr. Stott has included that categorisation in his sentencing note, and I also agree with those categorisations. These are specified offences. So far as these most serious offences are concerned, these come within Category 2A in the Sentencing Council guideline. Harm is, in my judgment, in Category 2 because the child assaulted in each case is extremely young. Culpability is in Category A, for the obvious reason that your breach of trust could hardly be greater, and you recorded the assaults. You must also, it seems to me, have carefully planned each assault in order to escape detection. A significant aggravating factor is the location, the nursery, a place where, of course, every parent and guardian expects their child will be safe. In addition, as the prosecution point out, the recordings themselves capture the sounds of others, indicating that other children were in the vicinity. In this particular case, the fact that the children were asleep is a more nuanced feature of the case, but it seems clear that you took advantage of the children being asleep. The mitigating factor is that of your good character, but in the context of the history of your offending, that is of limited significance. Of more significance, however, is the fact that you've pleaded guilty to all matters. For one such offence, the indicated starting point after trial is 11 years imprisonment with a range of between 7 and 15 years. The aggravating factors present here would lead to an adjustment upwards towards the top of that range. However, I'm not sentencing you for one offence, but for 5 such offences carried out upon 2 children, along with the multiplicity of other offences. In addition, the non-penetrative sexual assaults are serious, attracting for a single offence falling into Category 2A a starting point sentence after trial of 4 years with a range of between 3 to 7 years imprisonment. There are 4 such offences committed against 3 children. The sexual assault starting point of 2 years imprisonment after trial with a range of between 1 and 4 years. There are sentencing council guidelines for the offences of voyeurism and the indecent image offences. The voyeurism offences here would attract a starting point sentence after trial of 26 weeks for a single offence. The most serious of the indecent image offences would attract a starting point of 6 years imprisonment after trial. There are no sentencing council guidelines for the offence of outraging public decency, but I've been referred to the relevant decisions of the Court of Appeal. I have to consider the issue of dangerousness, Mr. Chan. I've read the pre-sentence report prepared by Miss Rowley, one of the very experienced probation officers based at this court, and I am entirely in agreement with her reasoning and her conclusion. You have a deep-seated sexual obsession, primarily with young children, and that has led to your offending escalating from non-contact to actual contact offences. I consider that there is a significant risk of you causing serious harm by the commission of further specified offences in the future, and that you are therefore dangerous as that term is understood in the criminal justice context. I'm grateful to Mr. Jones, who has said on your behalf all that realistically could be said. I accept that you now feel remorse. Indeed, it would be remarkable if you did not. But this is after a period of 14 years of sexual deviancy. Your pleas of guilty are, of course, of significance and mean that I will reduce by 1/3 the sentences otherwise appropriate. Mr. Chan, can I ask you to stand, please? Vincent Chan, these offences are all so serious taken together as to require the imposition of immediate custodial terms. I will increase the sentences otherwise appropriate for the lead offences, the penetration of children under the age of 13, to mark all of the criminality for which I have to sentence you today. I will pass the appropriate sentences for the other offences, all to run concurrently with the sentences imposed for these 5 lead offences. I have, of course, kept the issue of totality in mind. Every right-thinking person hearing about your offences would feel revulsion and disbelief. Your conduct was utterly wicked, perverse, and depraved. You became a sexual predator and someone who had clearly lost all sense of moral compass. For every parent and guardian, their children are the most important part of their lives. They are priceless. When very young, they are at their most vulnerable. Most parents and guardians have, of course, at some point to entrust their children to the care of others, and that trust is honoured by all conscientious teachers and carers. But you, Victor Chan, chose to breach the trust placed in you by the parents and indeed your fellow staff members, both at St Mary's Primary School and then at the Bright Horizons Nursery. You did so in the most despicable of ways, violating the trust of your child victims at the school and then the bodies of your child victims at the nursery. This was, in my judgment, offending of the utmost seriousness, beginning, so far as one can tell, with you downloading child pornography from the internet from at least 2011, creating your own library of sexual imagery whilst working at St Mary's, before moving on to carry out what may be termed a campaign of penetrative and non-penetrative sexual abuse after you'd started working at the nursery. That continued for some 2 years. Whilst at the nursery, you had the opportunity to carry out actual sexual abuse upon victims too young and helpless to stop you, and too young to alert anyone as to what you were doing. They were defenceless. And between 2011 and 2023, you also committed offences directed at adults. It is clear that I must look beyond the figures to which I've already made reference. Whilst I do not consider that a life sentence is appropriate or justified here, I am sure that a standard determinate sentence would not fully address the risk that you currently represent. And so I consider it necessary to impose lengthy, extended prison terms in respect of the lead offences, in order not just to punish you, but also to protect the public. For each of the offences of assault by penetration, in the context of all of your offending, had you been convicted after trial, the sentence would have been one of 27 years. That is reduced by 1/3 in the light of your pleas of guilty to a period of 18 years. There will be an extended licence period of 8 years. And so the sentences in respect of each of the offences set out in counts 3, 5, 7, 9 and 10 are expressed as concurrent extended sentences of 26 years, of which the custodial element is 18 years and the extended licence period is 8 years, making a total extended sentence of 26 years. I will explain what that means, Mr. Chan. You will serve 2/3 of the custodial period in prison before the parole board will consider whether it is safe to release you, and if so, upon what terms. Once released, you will serve on licence any part of the custodial period which remains, and you will then be subject to an extended licence period for a further 8 years. If, when you are subject to licence, you commit another offence or fail to comply with the terms of your licence, you will be liable to be recalled to custody and may serve the entire sentence of 26 years in custody. The 155 days which you've spent in custody awaiting sentence will automatically count towards the custodial term of your sentence. As a result of your convictions, you will be subject to the notification requirements for life, and the disclosure and barring service will ensure that you are barred from any regulated activity with children or vulnerable adults. The prosecution have asked that I make a sexual harm prevention order. The terms have been put into writing and essentially agreed by Mr. Jones on your behalf. I make the order as drafted, considering it necessary to protect women and children from sexual harm by you in the future. It will remain in place indefinitely. Breaching such an order is itself a criminal offence, punishable with imprisonment. Mr. Chan, you may sit down. I will announce the sentences in respect of the other offences. All sentences, as I've said, are to be served concurrently. On counts 1, 13, 16 and 19, 4 years imprisonment. On count 2, 16 months. On counts 4, 6, 8 and 11, 4 years. On counts 12, 14, 17 and 20, 16 months. On count 15, 12 months. On counts 18, 21 and 24, 8 months. On counts 22 and 25, 16 weeks. On counts 23 and 26, 10 weeks. Turning to the committal charges, on charges 1 and 6, terms of 4 years. On charges 2, 7 and 16, 16 months. On charges 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 17 and 18, terms of 12 months. On charges 13 and 15, 3 months. On charges 14 and 20 through to 30, terms of 4 months. On charge 19, a term of 3 years. The victim surcharge will apply. I will make the orders requested for forfeiture and destruction of the digital devices. Mr. Chan, you may go down.
Well, that is the end of the sentencing of Victor Chan. John Dodd, KC, spelling out his reasoning. 18 years in prison for Vincent Chan. He did plead guilty at the earliest opportunity, which means, by my maths, that he should be out in 12 years' time if the parole board allow him to. Let's cross to Tom Parmenter, our correspondent, who has been covering this case for us. Really strong words by the judge at the end there, Tom, wasn't there, to Vincent Chan. Your conduct was utterly wicked, perverse and depraved. He lost all moral compass. This was offending of the utmost seriousness. Yes, and the length of time that he was offending in educational settings is almost 2 decades. And we can now tell you that the number of families who have been contacted by the Metropolitan Police to be told that their child may have been in contact with Vincent Chan during his time at a primary school in North London, then a nursery on the Finchley Road in North London, that 1,200 families in North London have had contact from the police to be told that their child may have been at risk. And that is just an unimaginable situation for many of them, because detectives have not been able to give all of them clarity on whether or not their child was abused by this quite despicable paedophile, as he was described during this court case at Wood Green this afternoon. He has now been taken down to the cells. A 45-year-old who started offending when he was, as far as we know, in 2011 at a primary school where he worked sorting out the IT. He worked as a supply teacher as well. And that offending was started with upskirting, trying to take covert photographs of young students, particularly female students, and also adult colleagues. And when he moved to a nursery, preschool environment, a Bright Horizons nursery on Finchley Road in North London,
that has since closed, he escalated that offending to incorporate him filming himself using iPads that were issued to staff in the nursery to film himself sexually abusing very young children, aged 2, 3, 4 years old. Some of them pre-verbal. They couldn't talk. They were defenceless. And Vincent Chan also, and this is very distressing content that we've obviously heard during the judge's remarks there, and it is just the hallmark of this case, unfortunately. But we know that during nap time at that nursery, Vincent Chan was filming himself on those nursery-issued iPads, and then further creating manipulated images involving pornography that he had found in corners of the internet. A thoroughly sickening case that raises so many serious questions around the hiring process for Vincent Chan when he moved from that primary school to the nursery. His offending wasn't known at that time, but we have been told at Sky News that there were concerns raised by parents at the nursery about Vincent Chan's behaviour, the way he interacted with people at that nursery during his time there. But it was only June 2024 when a member of staff escalated a concern about how Vincent Chan was filming youngsters in inappropriate ways and setting those videos to music, that prompted the police to get involved. And they found 69 electronic devices with over 1 million images that Vincent Chan had stored. Many of them he'd recorded himself, some he'd produced himself. But as you heard in the judge's summary there, some perverse, horrific material that he had created, and a betrayal of trust, I think, that is hard to really get your head around. Every parent in this country who uses childcare, of course, the vast majority do, want to know that their child is safe when they are dropped off at nursery or whichever professional organisation is asked to look after their children. And in this particular instance, it went horrifically wrong, and that will inevitably be met with disgust of all those people who work in childcare in this country, who do the right things, who do have the safeguarding in place and do have the safety and welfare of children at the very heart of every decision they make during their working day. Vincent Chan was the polar opposite of that, and there are significant questions, not least from the parents of those children involved. As I say, 1,200 families told that their children may have had contact with Vincent Chan, and the Metropolitan Police have told us that they've only been able to give clarity to a handful of families that to say, yes, Vincent Chan certainly did abuse your child. And therefore there are many, many parents who just do not know, and perhaps will never know, whether or not their young child was indeed abused. We've been speaking to one of those families whose identities we are not revealing, because of course that is one of the natures of this case, that the identities of the children are protected. But we've been speaking to that family about Vincent Chan's crimes and the impact that it has had on them. On the front of the folder that tells the story of their daughter's time at nursery.
He wrote a large chunk of what's inside this, and we wanted to share it because it demonstrates how much is tainted by what he's done, how we remember her time at nursery. He was responsible for every element of her care when she was there, settling her to sleep during nap time, her intimate care, going to the toilet, comforting her when she was upset. As a parent, knowing those moments of vulnerability were looked over by a predator, I feel the innocence of her childhood is stolen.
Chan had over 1 million images on his devices, many showing him abusing young children in a primary school, and then the Bright Horizons nursery on Finchley Road in North London. Among them, this couple's daughter.
On his devices, they found a whole load of images of our daughter, which were described to us as being very disturbing in nature. As a result, they considered her to be extremely high risk of also having been sexually abused.
He'd worked at the nursery for 7 years. Before that, he was secretly filming young students and adult colleagues at a primary school.
I, Vincent Chan, 281080, hereby confirm that I'm guilty of all the things complained of in the disclosure document.
How do you feel about the videos I've told you so far? No comment. Do you recall those videos?
No comment.
1,200 families in North London have been told their children might have been exposed to this serial offender.
Whilst we've been able to speak to a number of families and provide them with clarity of what happened, tragic and absolutely disgusting behaviour by Chan, I still walk away with the unknown and being unable to actually speak to all families and provide them the clarity that their child was not subject to harm during Vincent Chan's care. All of those families that have had children go through that nursery setting or go through the primary school will be asking themselves the question, was my child a victim?
Do you have any feelings towards what he has done?
Obviously, we're totally sickened by his actions, and it's a real sense of despair that she was exposed to that. For us making a decision that millions of parents make every day to leave their children in the care of these professional organisations who have on the surface checks and balances and regulations to comply with. But this individual was so easily able to manipulate that system.
I feel absolutely let down by the hiring process and the fact that an existing offender was hired with rooms full of pre-verbal children who are literally sitting ducks behind closed doors with a sexual predator. I consider Bright Horizons responsible alongside Vincent Chan.
What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see a prosecution brought by the local authority.
Bright Horizons said their thoughts are with the families involved. Keeping children safe is our most important responsibility, they said. Vincent Chan broke that trust. His actions were depraved and devious and go against the kindness and care our dedicated professionals provide to children each day. The nursery chain said it's improved safeguarding, whistleblowing procedures and staff training. Parents say this must lead to systemic change in nurseries across the country. It is a deeply harrowing case that affects so many families, like the mother and father you just heard, who are in that dilemma and have been wrestling with it ever since they were told by the police last October that their daughter had been photographed by Vincent Chan. They do not know whether or not she was abused, and they are daily struggling with that position of not definitively knowing one way or the other and how they will deal with that as their daughter grows up. It is a case, as I say, that affects so many people. We will be hearing from the Crown Prosecution Service and the Metropolitan Police and lawyers who have worked on behalf of the families. I'll just stand out the way so we can hear that now.
Thank you. I am Detective Superintendent Lewis Basford from the Metropolitan Police. Today's events have been hugely significant. This significant sentence reflects the gravity of Vincent Chan's crimes and demonstrates that such calculated harm against children will be met with the full weight of justice. Support for victims and those affected have been at the heart of our work. We recognise that although our investigation may be ending, the journey for those navigating the impact of these crimes is only just beginning. The scale, nature and cruelty of Chan's offending have caused immeasurable trauma to children, families and the wider community. These crimes took place over 13 years, but the consequences will be felt by many for a lifetime. The commissioned NSPCC helpline remains active, and we would encourage anyone with concerns to make use of this resource. This helpline is there to provide information and support and can be contacted on 0800 028 0828. A parents group shared a message that they wanted me to read on their behalf. The fear we feel about the cruel violation of our children will never dissipate. Ordinary memories from early childhood are now tainted with doubt, anxiety and guilt. We are unable to look back on our children's earliest years with peace, certainty and optimism. Instead, memories and photographs of our children when they were most innocent, achieving milestones of walking, talking, reading and writing will permanently be coupled with doubt, fear and worry about Vincent Chan. What should have been a time of safety and innocence has now become a source of enduring distress. Through the already commissioned local child safeguarding practice review, we have pledged to ensure that parents and carers' voices are at the front and central to this. Its findings will help to protect against similar incidents in the future. To all victims and families, your strength, cooperation and courage have shaped this investigation from the very beginning. I thank you wholeheartedly for the trust and willingness to engage with police, as it is ultimately allowed us to be where we are today. My further thanks go to the investigation teams whose efforts have allowed us to stand here with confidence today, knowing that every identified victim has been seen, heard and given the justice they deserve. To the CPS, whose joint working to ensure charges were secured at pace, and to the media for your reporting with empathy, restraint and respect. And finally, a message to the public. We stand with every victim of child sexual abuse, and we will continue to do everything within our power to protect children and pursue offenders, no matter how complex or confronting the investigation may be. Thank you.
I'm James Smith from the Crown Prosecution Service. I'm a Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor and the head of the Organised Child Sexual Abuse Unit. Vincent Chan's crimes were appalling. When parents drop their children at nursery or at school, they put their trust in the staff to look after their loved ones and to help them develop. Vincent Chan was someone who should have been caring for and nurturing children. Instead, he broke the trust placed in him and exploited his victims at their most vulnerable. His obsessive and predatory instincts are clear from the number of children and adults he abused and spied upon for his own gratification. I know that Vincent Chan's actions have caused a great deal of harm to his victims, to their families and to the wider community. I would like to thank them for their courage throughout this case, and I hope that the efforts of the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service can bring some small relief to those he has hurt and reassure the public that we are dedicated to pursuing justice for victims of sexual abuse. Thank you.
Detective Superintendent Lewis Basford from the Metropolitan Police and also James Bolton-Smith from the CPS, who were telling us their reaction to this sentencing today of Vincent Chan, sentenced to 18 years in prison for a string of offences. Let's return to our correspondent, Tom Parmenter, who's down there, and also we're getting more reaction on the steps.
Head of the abuse claims team and partner at Lee Day Solicitors. We represent about 50 families at the Finchley Road Bright Horizons nursery who are affected by this case. So I'm going to make a statement on behalf of the families we represent, and then I'm going to make a statement as their lawyer. So first of all, the family statement. We welcome the end of this particular process and are relieved that Vincent Chan is now behind bars for his sickening crimes. However, we still do not know the full extent of his offending at Bright Horizons, Finchley Road. Every family deserves the truth, and every child who suffered must see justice done. Bright Horizons must also be held to account. We believe their safeguarding failures created the perfect hunting ground for a predator. Chan was not a lone wolf, and this was not about his extraordinary technical skill. He was able to operate for years in a workplace where safeguarding failures were missed, minimised or ignored. Camden Council must use its powers to pursue Bright Horizons for breaches under the Health and Safety at Work legislation. A nursery must be a place of safety, not a place where children are put at risk. We are also using the Victims' Right to Review scheme to seek reconsideration of the neglect charges for which Chan was first arrested. Our children carry what was done to them. They deserve justice, and we will not stop until they have it. Finally, we are working with the government to ensure early years settings are closed to predators. Parents must be able to go to work with absolute confidence that their children are safe in the care of childcare providers. So I'm now going to make a statement as the lawyer for the 50 families whose children attended Bright Horizons family, Finchley Road, who were represented by Lead A. The litany of sexual offences for which Vincent Chan has been sentenced today is truly sickening. My team and I have many years' experience in representing survivors of abuse, but Chan's crimes, including as they do, offences against very young children, are particularly horrifying. And yet the impact of Chan's misconduct at Bright Horizons Finchley Road goes wider than the charges for which he has been sentenced today. He photographed other children in concerning and disturbing ways, enjoying their humiliation and ignoring their distress. And he shouted at, berated and mistreated them. For some of those children, there has been a lasting emotional impact, affecting their ability to trust adults. Parents are struggling mentally with the consequences of knowing, suspecting or fearing that their children have been harmed. This includes the anguish of knowing that, as there was no CCTV footage kept and the children victimised were so very young, the full extent of Chan's actions may never be known. Families are therefore living with the consequences of Chan's abuse every day. The whole nursery community has been impacted by this case. Our clients seek accountability against Chan and also against the Bright Horizons managers and the company for the safeguarding failures that allowed a persistent offender to work with young children for almost 7 years. It is horrifying to hear that he had been offending for a decade before he was employed at Bright Horizons Finchley Road. The families call on the relevant authorities to robustly investigate Bright Horizons policies and systems, including around digital safeguarding. Our clients say they repeatedly raised red flags. Accountability for this case cannot stop with one individual. Thank you.
That there a statement from the Lee Day abuse team who are representing the families. A statement from Alison Miller there who gave us the family's reaction and also her reaction as a lawyer and the legal case that they are now going to take forward. Hearing how the families welcome the end of this particular process and the fact that he is behind bars, but for so many of these families, it's just the uncertainty. They do not know the full extent of these crimes. They also say, though, that Bright Horizons Nursery must also face questions. Very clear that the families believe that their safeguarding procedures failed. They say that this man was not a lone wolf. He was not a technological genius. Also that the council must pursue Bright Horizons and a reconsideration that families would like of the neglect charges. They say our children deserve justice. Let's return to our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter, who has been following this case. It's just such an awful case, isn't it, Tom? And the statements on the steps from the police, the CPS and the families' legal teams just highlight that real fear that every parent who's ever had childcare will fear. That when children are so little, when they are non-verbal, you do trust absolutely with their lives those who are working in these kind of settings, in nursery settings around the country.
Yes, I have no doubt that the revulsion felt within the childcare industry in this country towards Vincent Chan is extreme because it is, as you say, an environment that is heavily checked, that there are safeguarding procedures that are built into it, but something went horrendously wrong in the case of Vincent Chan, who was an employee of the Bright Horizons Nursery on Finchley Road in West Hampstead, North London. Bright Horizons is a leading chain of nurseries in the UK, and they have put out a statement in response to the sentencing that we've seen here of Vincent Chan being given 18 years for a catalogue of horrific abuse that goes back 2 decades in a primary school and then in this Bright Horizons nursery where he was filming himself using iPads issued to the staff in that nursery, and then filming himself committing sexual acts and then creating manipulated images himself. A really appalling catalogue of abuse. And we know that the Bright Horizons nursery chain have said to us today, this is a very distressing time for families and all those impacted by Vincent Chan's horrific crimes. And our thoughts are first and foremost with them. Keeping children safe is our most important responsibility, they said. Vincent Chan broke that trust. His actions were depraved and devious and go against the kindness and care our dedicated professionals provide to children each day. They then explain that they have taken a number of steps to ensure that safeguarding, that whistleblowing procedures are better and that staff training is improved. They are cooperating with a local safeguarding investigation that is ongoing in North London regarding Vincent Chan's crimes that he has been sentenced for here at Wood Green Crown Court this afternoon. Very little emotion from him as he stood in the dock, but the families of some of the victims of Vincent Chan were in court listening to the detail, very clearly upset by what they were listening to and what they have been through since the police told them that their child had been in contact with Vincent Chan. The Metropolitan Police have informed 1,200 families who had children either in that primary school or in the Bright Horizons nursery on Finchley Road in North London that their child may have been connected or exposed to this serial paedophile. They've only been able to give clarity to a handful of families that they have established that he had abused their child. So many families are in this awful position of just not knowing whether or not their child had been abused. He was prosecuted and faced sentence today for the crimes where he had stored images or stored videos that he had created. They found over 1 million images on 69 different devices that Vincent Chan had, and the police have told us that they are confident that he did not share those with other networks of sex offenders, that he was, the police believe, acting alone. But a horrifying case that has raised really fundamental questions about safeguarding, about how this man was not stopped, and also what needs to change in nurseries around the country as a result of the appalling case of Vincent Chan.
Tom Parmenter for us there at Wood Green Crown Court. Thank you very much for now. Well, joining us now is the Chief Executive of the National Day Nurseries Association, Tim McLaughlin. Tim, very good to talk to you today. How has this case affected parents' trust in nurseries and the safeguardings that they provide, and how much has it affected nurseries' trust in the staff they're employing?
Well, Jane, this is the most harrowing and appalling case that I think many of us will have ever heard. And the thoughts and prayers of everyone working with children, whether it's nurseries, whether it's schools, whether it's healthcare, anybody working with children will be revulsed by this, absolutely. And it must be that we're thinking about the victims. So you talked about trust, and when a parent drops off a child at nursery, it is the biggest and scariest thing they can do, and they must know and want to know that their child is going to be safe. And in our country, we have something called the Early Years Foundation Stage, which governs the standards expected in all nurseries to keep children safe, with safeguarding at its heart. That's, if you like, a safeguarding shield. And this despicable, depraved and determined predator has found a way through that shield. And so on behalf of the nurseries, on behalf of the childcare, early education community, we want to make sure that all parents feel that they can speak up, that we can speak up sooner, that we can actually make sure that where we see that something's not right, that that's the culture, that's the strength that we can add to this shield. And that's what we want to do to restore the trust, because there are over 1 million children in the UK going to nurseries every single day. And actually they are safe. I want to be able to say that all of the layers that we've seen of safeguarding that are in this guidance, The reality is this individual found a way through, and we should concentrate on measures to address that. There is not a wholesale failure. Children are safe, but the bottom line is this individual found a way through, and we must concentrate on measures to address that.
But what's clear is that the current measures clearly don't work. If somebody is able to commit offences at a primary school for a number of years and then move into a nursery setting and commit further, gradually more and more serious offences over a long period of years, the current safeguarding system fails. The current safeguarding system basically means that unless you're caught, you can get away with it.
And we need to make sure that we are spotting the signs much sooner. That's, I think, the biggest learning from this, that actually to spot a sign, speak up, and it to be normal. Let's normalise that speaking up and acting quickly, because we want to make sure that every child, every parent feels safe. And the checks and balances, the interviews, the supervising, the recruitment, the DBS checks, these are part of the layers of this safeguarding shield. And you're right in what you say. He was caught and stopped. We need to catch determined individuals, which this person was, because the majority of people don't go into childcare to do this. There are thousands and thousands of very hardworking, committed individuals working in our nurseries, and they are making a difference every day, creating a best start for every single child. This is about an individual that found a way through that, and speaking up and catching and responding quickly is one of the areas we could explore to stop this evil getting in.
Do you think the current DBS system is redundant, really? Because that literally only flags somebody who's been caught and charged with something.
There are a number of things that could be done with the DBS system, because the police don't only have an option to disclose non-conviction information. The reality is this individual, even if he did have previous non-conviction information, it may not have been available. So that's why acting quickly, changing our culture, strengthening that shield of speaking up sooner, acting quicker, I think that's one of the areas we can explore. There's been talk of, do we need to consider CCTV mandatory in settings? I would say that CCTV could be part of a range of measures. It might not be suitable in all settings. Where are the images going to be stored? How are they going to be reviewed? The reality is that the culture, strengthening that shield, will act faster and make sure that we don't see this evil happening again.
What is the process when staff are employed to ensure that they are safe?
So the DBS check you've mentioned, we've got thorough recruitment in terms of interviews, probing questions, making sure that they are supervised, probation periods. These are all things that are laid out in the EYFS to actually make sure that the right people are working in settings. So I want to assure parents that they can ask questions, they can ask about safeguarding policies in individual settings. And the actual EYFS, which is inspected by Ofsted to make sure of compliance, is there to make sure that these standards are maintained. And let's just think wider than nurseries. This individual was able to commit these offences in schools as well, and we're not sure what other areas of society. So we're not talking about one area, we're talking about right the way across our country. We're talking about all of us being responsible for safeguarding, all of us speaking up, creating safety, and making sure that a determined individual cannot get in.
Does it affect your faith in the people that you employ?
The people that I employ, it does not affect my faith, no, because I know and trust all the people that we employ, and I know that many nursery managers up and down the land, they trust and actually really appreciate the extra mile that all of our workers go to every day. Having the right system in place where we can speak up swiftly and normally to raise concerns in an appropriate way for all concerned, that is what we want to strengthen the shield with. I think that's something that will increase the trust we all have. But this was one individual that found a way through that shield in a most appalling way.
Tim McLaughlin, the Chief Executive of the National Day Nurseries Association. Very good to get your thoughts today on this sentencing. Thank you very much.